Hey guys, June here, and it's been a while since I made one of these videos, so I wanted to apologize for that, but in the last one we were talking about this guy, John Suler, and an effect that he coined relatively recently called the online disinhibition effect. In that video we were looking at a subset of this effect that Suler called the benign disinhibition effect, and how that influenced e-dating culture and people's propensity for being honest in online relationships. In this video we're going to look at the much more common manifestation of this effect as it pertains to encouraging negative behavior online. The influence of this effect is very widespread everywhere, from the more obsessive and vindictive forms of trolling through PvP griefing, and so I want to throw out some of the extreme examples so that we have at least kind of a core definition of what sort of behavior we're talking about. One particularly striking example of this are hackers, and you might think that the individuals who are engaging in this behavior are doing so exclusively for the sake of the financial gains. That seems like a logical conclusion. After all, it is just an elaborate form of theft. However, most hackers go far above and beyond what provides financial gain for them. They'll not only transfer over those valuables, but they'll take their time to drop untradeable items like large stacks of overload that they know have value to the owner of the account, even though that provides no value to them. They'll go through your player-owned house or your player-owned port and destroy them as much as possible, or even do things like dismiss your Vitalis before it was incorporated into the pet interface. All of these sorts of things cost the hacker their own time and provide no direct benefit aside from the sadistic pleasure of causing pain to the individual who owns that account. Another example might be a PKer who's stalking a person who's training agility at the Wilderness Agility course despite the fact that the person is using no items and drops nothing when they're killed. It's very common for these individuals to track their victims across several worlds by adding them and following their private messaging world status, or if the person turns their private messaging off, they'll enter their clan chat and follow them as they hop between worlds, or use the website interface to try and find them through their clan. Again, this takes copious amounts of time, and it provides no benefit to the individual whatsoever aside from the satisfaction of harassing the individual and causing them stress. This all comes from what we call sadism, which is an individual's tendency to derive pleasure, usually in the context of sexual gratification but not always, from inflicting pain or suffering on other people. Now, normally when we hear about sadism, it's in the context of some of the more extreme forms of serial killers. However, like most things when you're dealing with people, everybody falls on a sort of bell curve distribution with variable tendencies towards being sadistic. On the extreme high end, you do have the individuals who are dismembering and eating people purely for the enjoyment of it, and on the extreme low end you find people who find it maybe distasteful to even watch violent films. Meanwhile, the vast majority of us find ourselves somewhere in the middle. Obviously, our empathy keeps us enough in check not to actually go out and cause deliberate harm to other people, as the ones on the extreme far end do. But we may find ourselves expressing that in other ways. For example, BDSM is a very common fetish, and individuals who are willing participants do engage in sadistic and masochistic behavior towards each other for sexual pleasure. In other cases, we may be exercising these fantasies in a game environment. For example, the Fable series was incredibly popular because it gave the player the opportunity to make the obviously negative decisions in every circumstance, even going as far as allowing you to murder your own sister. Outlets like this are great because they give the average person the opportunity to express those fantasies without actually causing harm to anybody, but in any case it should be obvious now that on average most people do have sadistic tendencies to some level. So this brings us to our follow-up question: why is this manifesting so much more frequently through online media like RuneScape? As you might expect, given the intro to this video, it has everything to do with the online disinhibition effect, but I want to look a little bit more closely at a few of the 6 principles behind the effect that John Suler illustrated. First, the you don't know me principle comes down to the simple anonymity and the safety that comes from that, but because we talked about that in the last video and the fact that it pretty much plays the same role in any kind of online interaction whether they're positive or negative, I'm simply going to skip it because it doesn't contribute anything really meaningful to this particular discussion. Secondly, the see you later principle has to do with the timing between chats, and because a lot of the interactions that would fall into the category of what we're talking about don't really involve any chat-based interaction at all, we're also going to skip this. Lastly, the your rules don't apply here principle has to do with the fact that in social interactions, a lot of your behavior is built around things like social status in terms of power and wealth, and this doesn't translate well into online communications. However, it also doesn't really pertain significantly to the instances that we're talking about, so we're going to gloss over this as well. The remaining 3 principles seem to be interacting in a very interesting way to create an environment very similar to the example I gave with the Fable games. To start with, the you can't see me principle is in many ways an extension of the you don't know me principle. However, in this case, its expanse is broadening slightly, and it's allowing the individual who is the perpetrator in our scenarios to build a false persona very much the way that you may roleplay as an evil character in a game like Fable. This could be as simple as an individual who's developed a hacker's pseudonym, or as complex as a group who fancy themselves to be the gods of warbands. In any case, this allows the individual to develop an identity of the self separate from the actual self, which frees them from a lot of the guilt or potential consequences of the behaviors. Following up on that, the "it's all in my head" principle does a similar thing with the individual who's playing the victim in our scenarios. We talked about this briefly in a previous video, but the lack of information that we receive from sensory inputs causes us to confabulate information about the opposing person, and in a sense we construct a non-player character type version of them within our head. This in a sense protects the perpetrator from the guilt or other consequences they might feel for their behavior by depriving them of the knowledge of the personhood of the individual on the receiving end, effectively circumventing their empathy. The last principle, which John Suller called the "it's just a game" principle, amplifies this comparison with a game environment significantly. The analogy of a cyber world, distinct and separate from the actual world, especially with the ability for the user to log on or off at their discretion, is for all intents and purposes identical to a game environment and provides the same sense of escapism. The interbehavior of these three effects, as well as the very small contributions from the ones that we didn't talk about, help construct a fictional world in which the individual operates. In that sense, even the individuals who are engaging in these kinds of behaviors don't usually exhibit the same kind of intentionality that we see with actual sadistic criminals. While that may not be altogether heartwarming, hopefully it provides a little bit of solace to some of you who might have been victims of some of this kind of behavior. We're likely to experience behaviors like this pretty frequently, so keeping this kind of thing in mind can be really helpful for not taking it quite so personally when it does happen. So thank you guys as always for watching. I wanted to take this quick opportunity to say I'm going on vacation next week. I'm going down to Florida with my dad to visit my grandparents, and I'll be gone for about a week and a half. Unfortunately, with the last week being Christmas and everything, I didn't have enough time to get videos ready to have like a scheduled upload thing while I'm gone, so there's just not going to be any videos for about a week or two, and I really apologize for that. I was hoping to get enough done so that I could keep things going consistently, because I really love providing videos for you guys, and I don't want you to just like lose interest in the channel because I'll be gone for a week or two. But I will be back and doing this as quickly as I can. Hopefully I'm going to have a great time down there. It's going to be much sunnier than here. I live in Maine, so it's fucking cold outside. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. As always, I appreciate all of your contributions to this channel, whether that's just views or just comments, interacting with you in any way I can. I hope you have an awesome holiday, and I'll see you guys in the next video.